provocative to China is that Taiwan exists at all as it does today. Every morning when Taiwan wakes up, Beijing is offended. By increasing not just military capability, but the spirit that Taiwan believes in its separateness, helps deter China from undertaking military action in the first place. I think it's important to define what the Chinese threat is. And for the United States, I think the threat in the 21st century is existential. The Chinese threat is global. I think it's important to repeat that. For example, the utterly false idea that China could be a broker in the Ukraine war. The example of the Chinese foreign minister symbolizing a new deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Joint Chinese, Russian, Iranian naval maneuvers in the Arabian Sea, and the Belt and Road Initiative reaching into Latin America and Africa. And the Chinese threat is economic and social, as well as politico-military. The Chinese have spent 3 or 4 decades or more stealing intellectual property from the United States, Europe, the other developed countries of the world, which they then convert to their own advantage. They have used companies as arms of the Chinese state. Huawei and ZTE are not telecommunications companies. They represent part of China's effort to take control of 5th-generation telecommunications, so that essentially everything that's said over their networks, said or transmitted as data, can be retrieved by China and used for China's advantage. So when you look at this overall threat that China poses, we can say that, I think with confidence, that Taiwan is what the Germans call the Schwerpunkt, what Clausewitz focused on in his studies of war. This is, on this island, the center of gravity of the Chinese threat. And understanding that helps Taiwan over the long term explain to others, also now feeling the Chinese threat, why there is a common bond and why efforts at collective protection and self-defense become so important. As there is a lot of discussion in the United States about how Taiwan should not be provocative, that Taiwan should be very careful in everything that it says and does. Now, obviously, all government officials try to be prudent. That's important. But let's be clear when we talk about what's provocative. What's really provocative to China is that Taiwan exists at all as it does today. Every morning when Taiwan wakes up, Beijing is offended. And that's not going to change. So my advice, for what it's worth, is in the face of this massive Chinese threat, let's not become obsessed with symbols. Let's focus on concrete reality, not abstractions or gestures. Ultimately, maintaining independence rests on palpable structures of force economically, militarily, and politically. Much more important than the symbols. The symbols, I think, can come later. My former boss, Secretary of State James Baker, used to tell me all the time, he'd say, keep your eyes on the prize. Keep your eyes on the prize. And the prize is maintaining a free government here in Taiwan. China has so distorted what the Shanghai Communique said, has twisted what that was intended to mean, so dramatically that many people in America say one China policy as if they were following Beijing's interpretation, when in fact they don't know the difference and the subtleties that were in that phrase to begin with. So it's not a question of finding the right phrase, it's a question of finding the right capabilities and allies for Taiwan to maintain its status. So that when people say, well, will Taiwan fight for its independence? Or do they expect... That's the right answer. That's what China has to understand, that the people here believe in governing themselves, and they're not going to give it up. And it's important that that's communicated to the United States, so that when commentators say the Taiwanese are using American support, but they're really not prepared to defend themselves, that's wrong. That's wrong. And that if it came to military action, that Taiwan would fight. Showing that capability reduces the possibility of actual hostilities. By increasing not just military capability, but the spirit that Taiwan believes in its separateness, helps deter China from undertaking military action in the first place. That's why it's not provocative to build up Taiwan's capabilities. As the saying goes, strength is not provocative. Weakness is provocative. And that's what needs to be avoided in